Welcome to the Temple Society Australia's first online service of the year. I am Elder Ingrid Hoffmann, recording this in Mornington on Boonwurrung country, whose elders and custodians I acknowledge from this lovely local season of abundance of the land and coastal waters. If you are viewing interstate, I know your summer temperatures and weather events have been more intense and challenging than those of Victoria, where we continue to enjoy a mostly mild season. Starting fresh with a clean spiritual slate is the aim of many of us when a new year begins. How are you going into February after the reset of the new year? Is 2024 and last month part of your ritual? Was it, as it is mine, to think about change for the better, a spiritual change perhaps, a change in habits for me too, a little less wine to further reduce my few glasses per week, cutting out unnecessaries like expensive foods, not least because inflation keeps escalating their costs. No new clothes, a little more exercise, putting into practice my long talked about semi-retirement, recommitment to giving to a few preferred charities, recommitment to caring about social justice. Then, when thinking about a better world, the reality of several wars raging overseas immediately looms like a mushroom cloud to defeat the spirit. On top of industrial slavery, human trafficking, nuclear arms escalation, climate catastrophes, and ballooning threats to the collapse of democracy. These are the disastrous human perversities that suddenly paralyze one's resolve. So, in one paragraph, I've steered us from optimism to disaster, impotence, disillusionment, despair. How on earth can this world be mended? Our 20 minutes together will feature more on the theme of but also on temptation and the tradition of Lent. Ange Woodburn's technical expertise will insert one hymn for you to either sing along to or listen to, and to round off, a little slideshow offers a personal view about the start of my year with reference to the last decade. When you abstain from food completely or markedly reduce your intake for a given period, you are fasting. And it's an ancient practice common to most religions. Fasting can generally be healthy. In recent terminology, it is said to cleanse or detox the body. Careful and mindful fasting is also associated with heightened sensibility or higher states of consciousness, and this traditionally melds with the idea of purifying the body. Fasting can be undertaken to prepare the mind and spirit to make amends for doing wrong, the forgiving of past sins. This focus comes around in annual cycles. In Christianity, during Lent. Intensive prayer or meditation also accompanies fasting in most religious practices. For moral and spiritual development, fasting can be seen as excellent training. As mentioned, fasting exists in some form or another in most world religions, but there is one faith that attaches primary importance to fasting, and that is Islam at Ramadan. According to the Holy Quran, other religions prior to Islam decreed fasting, and so that would include Christianity. But a UK religious scholar, Dr. Abid Ahmad, suggests the subject of fasting in Christianity is tricky to discuss, simply because Christianity is relatively short on religious laws. He says there is fundamental disagreement among the scholars as to whether Jesus commanded fasting. And fasting in Christianity changed with time due to the effects of social, political, and economic forces. For strict Christians of various denominations, Lent once was, and I dare say still is, a period of fasting for 40 days, with penitence, meaning to express remorse for wrongdoing, or penance, is observed in preparation for Easter. Here is the reading set for today via a slide that we shall share. Matthew 4, 1-11. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was famished. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. Remember the old King James version, the King James Bible quoted, "Get thee behind me, Satan," so much more theatrical. Let's sing our hymn, which will come to you on the screen. It's 107, "That We May Love."
Eternal God, your will demands we love the people of all lands, for in each person we can trace the image of your human face. We ask for insight, skill to find those problems facing humankind. Forgive us, Lord, whenever we are dulled by pride and apathy. Your love alone can stir our wills to fight the world's unbounded ills. May Christian people never cease their work for justice, truth, and peace. This global village we call Earth, replete with folk of equal worth, has pressing need forever near, as millions live with death and fear. Break down the walls that separate, root out the causes of our hate. Where hunger, pain, and want are known, and keep the poor crushed firmly down, please grant us energy to see like a system to protect the weak, implant in us a deep concern for old and young to live and learn. May that great love of yours be ours, your Spirit brace us with new powers, until these lives we have on loan reflect the purpose you have shown. Because you loved us first, we dare each other's loads to lift and bear.
Please let me propose a metaphorical reading of temptation in the biblical story, because I certainly do not believe in the existence of a devil nor angels. But I recognize the historical Jesus and am fascinated by his words, his teachings, and the early Christians. Jesus' life of resistance during the first century under the oppressive violence of the Roman Empire was set to engender a moral revolution based on his examples of love and compassion for humanity. The biblical story is not literal. In the Judean desert, there is no high mountain from which all the kingdoms of the earth could be seen, nor was there a temple in this wilderness around which the mythical devil, mythical in my view, could have materialized. These are allegorical representations. They demonstrate how through understanding and self-awareness, Jesus did not give in to the deceptive promises made to tempt him, refusing to satisfy his hunger by turning stones into bread, or to take advantage of his relationship with God by throwing himself down from the heights of the temple. He rejected the offer of political rule over the world's kingdoms. It's not that food, power, and leadership are inherently wrong, but rather that they can be used corruptly for the wrong ends or at the wrong time. Temptation is a proving or testing. We are tempted by desires and lures arising from the subconscious. Not everyone reacts weakly to temptations. They may be good at resistance. There is a psychological reason behind temptation, which is interesting to unpick. The brain's reward system is the scientific way of understanding this. From our reward system, the chemical dopamine is released, which acts as a neurotransmitter in the brain. It has a major role in our reward and motivational behavior. Things like addictive drugs and other lures like the lust for material possessions release large amounts of dopamine when rewarded. Briefly, we are not necessarily doomed to give in to things that are bad for us, nor will religious beliefs necessarily provide the willpower to resist temptation. But gaining and growing our self-awareness helps to better understand our own strengths and weaknesses. Meditation can also help regulate wayward desires. Healthy habits arise from routines daily and help us to stay focused on goals. Over the centuries, Jesus in the wilderness, that story has been interpreted in so many different ways. It could stand for the struggles of the Christian life, or to literal thinking Christians, the documentation of Jesus' experience over 40 days of fasting really happened, and propelled by his Holy Spirit, his life-changing public ministry began. In the wilderness of the world's disasters these days, my temptation is to despair. However, for inspiration to overcome the demon of despair, I sought the words of a progressive pastor I admire, Pastor Dawn, a Canadian like my other respected guide, Greta Vosper. Pastor Dawn's words are generously available online, and I have reshaped a few short passages for our context here. We must leave the isolation of our despair. Cooperation, coming together for the sake of the whole, has never been easy, and I suspect that in our lifetimes it may become even more difficult. But if peace truly is what we long for, there is no way to peace except the kind of justice which fosters cooperation among people, tribes, and nations. It is a daunting task, a task that no single one of us can achieve, but that's the point. There is work which needs doing, and we are the only ones who can do it, and we can only do it together. We can begin by resisting the temptation to hide from what is happening in the world. We need to strike a balance between doom scrolling and bearing witness to our neighbours' suffering. This is the least we can do. Life has never been normal. We always have, and we always will live our lives in the shadow of death. This makes all lives sacred, and we revere our lives by embodying love, living and loving every precious day, which is offered as a pure gift. For this is our daily bread, given to nourish us for the work, the challenges, the joys, and the sorrows of being love in the world. When autumn in Australia arrives after Easter, so will spring burst forth upon the West Bank, Gaza, and the Ukraine. Let us revere the sacredness of our Palestinian and Ukrainian sisters and brothers suffering by bearing witness and resisting sacrilege wherever, however, and whenever we can. Living fully is never easy, but 2 millennia ago, the historical Jesus feasted and rejoiced as he lived fully. I have no idea what springtime looked like in first century Palestine, but the beauty of the lilies of the field was embraced in their splendor. That beauty was embraced by Jesus. I hope that these prompts have been a way to reinforce how good can overturn bad. Fellow elder Anna Balehartz reflected upon this in her Easter address of 2021, and with her blessing, I will quote her words to end. The good can come out of bad message frames thinking in a beneficial way. Building a positive mindset creates thinking patterns that encourage self-care, enabling individuals to be in their best position to not only live their own lives to the fullest, but also to assist others in a virtuous cycle of well-being. Finally, a prayer or meditation by Greta Vosper on screen. Reaching into our inner world, let us realize ourselves to be the source of goodness. Let it be our responsibility to cultivate goodness and to distribute it. Let us be the agents of goodness. We are the instigators of change, the hands that build the well and draw the water. We can be the courage someone else needs, the inspiration for a movement, or the one who pours a cup of tea to enter and share the terrible loneliness of a neighbour. We are the agents for that kind of goodness. No guarantees, no supernatural resource rescues, but the opportunity for goodness that will not happen unless we make it happen through love. Amen. Now, finally, I wanted to acknowledge the references for this service. They were online. Metaphysical Meaning of Wilderness, that came from truthunity.net, and The Psychology of Temptation came from a site called goodtherapy.org, and finally Facing Our Demons was from Pastor Dawn, and that's pastordawn.com. I have a few slides to show you that derived from my time, over 10 years of employment in Mornington at Ballura, the historic house and garden. I was lucky to be offered this position in 2014. I came down for the role, and it's been very enlightening understanding the context of an historic house in this part of the world. You may know of Como and Ripon Lee. They're great mid-Victorian piles. Oh, and there's also Labassa, glorious in its sort of shabby chicness. But Ballura's in very good order, and my role was to look after the collections of art and antiques and to put on displays. And I had the joy of experiencing the gardens in all their seasons. And I know some Templar groups and individuals have visited Ballura, so this might spark some memories. Anyway, enjoy the slides, and I may see you at the after-service chat. Thank you for joining me this morning.